US President Donald Trump has, in fact, signed an executive order sanctioning the International Criminal Court and accusing it of illegitimate and baseless allegations targeting America and our close ally, Israel. The measures places financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who assist in ICC investigations of American citizens or its allies. Now, Trump signed the measure as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was visiting Washington. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Thursday said it was, quote-unquote, absurd to change face to instead charge fees to the U.S. military for using the Panama Canal. His comments came after the Panamanian president, Jose Raul Mulino, on Thursday, in fact, denied the U.S. State Department's claim that his country had reached a deal allowing U.S. warships to transit the Panama Canal for free. Mulino said he had told U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on Wednesday that he could neither set the fees to transit the canal nor exempt anyone from them, and that he was surprised, in fact, by the U.S. State Department's statement suggesting otherwise late Wednesday. Listen in.
I'm not confused about Panama. We had conversations. I felt there were strong first steps. We have expectations we made clear in those conversations. I respect very much that Panama has a process. They're a democratically elected government. They have rules. They have laws. They're going to follow their process. But our expectations remain the same. In particular on that, I would just say that the United States has a treaty obligation to protect the Panama Canal if it comes under attack. That treaty obligation would have to be enforced by the armed forces of the United States, particularly the U.S. Navy. I find it absurd that we would have to pay fees to transit a zone that we are obligated to protect in a time of conflict.
The U.S. Senate has confirmed President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the White House Budget Office, Russell Watt, hours after Democrats staged an all-night hearing in the chamber in protest. Watt's nomination, in fact, to lead the Office of Management and Budget, or the OMB, has been controversial due to his role as an author of Project 2025. It was a wish list of conservative priorities for Trump in his second term. Democrats held the floor overnight into Thursday, delivering speeches criticizing, in fact, Watt's role in Trump's efforts to shrink the federal government. Listen.
If the chaos of the last 2 weeks is any indication of what's to come, Russell's vote will be a massive liability for Donald Trump, for Republicans, and worst of all, for the country. Tonight, I will vote no fervently, strongly, with complete conviction, and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Donald Trump has stated that no U.S. troops will be needed in Gaza as Israel will, quote-unquote, turn over the territory after the war. Now, this comes as part of Trump's plan to take over Gaza, which has met with support from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump's plan, in fact, involves forcing the 2 million residents of Gaza into neighboring countries and developing the area into a quote-unquote Riviera of the Middle East. However, this proposal has been criticized by Antonio Guterres. He is the Secretary General of the UN, who labeled it as ethnic cleansing, in fact. Despite the backlash, Trump has doubled down on his plan, with top U.S. officials attempting to soften his stance. The situation remains contentious, to say the least, with concerns over the potential consequences and fallouts of Trump's proposed actions.
Israeli officials say they're moving ahead with plans to encourage and help Palestinians to leave the Gaza Strip. This comes after President Donald Trump floated a controversial plan this week calling for all of Gaza's 2 million people, 2 million Palestinians, to be removed. He says the U.S. would then move into the territory, oversee it, and oversee a lengthy reconstruction process. Now, this plan has come under fierce international condemnations. Many critics say it amounts to ethnic cleansing.
Israel's defense minister has told the country's army to prepare plans to give Palestinians in Gaza the freedom to leave, as Donald Trump doubled down on his controversial proposal for the U.S. to take over and redevelop the war-torn territory. Israel Katz said Gazans could emigrate, and countries who had criticized the country's war with Hamas would be obligated to allow them to enter their territory. Meanwhile, according to reports, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will visit Israel and Arab states in middle February, making his first trip, in fact, to the Middle East or West Asia after a widely condemned proposal by President Donald Trump to displace Palestinians in Gaza. Rubio will travel to the Munich Security Conference and then to Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar and Saudi Arabia from the 13th of February to the 18th of February, the senior State Department official said late Tuesday. Meanwhile, back home, a federal judge has blocked President Donald Trump's plan to push out federal employees by offering them financial incentives. The decision Thursday came hours before the midnight deadline for workers to apply for the program. A U.S. district judge in Boston, in fact, sided with several labor unions that had requested a temporary restraining order against the plan orchestrated by Trump and advisor Elon Musk. Trump is trying to downsize and reshape the federal workforce. The judge didn't express an opinion on the legality of the program, however. He scheduled a hearing for Monday and directed administration officials to extend the deadline to apply for the program until after the hearing. The White House says more than 40,000 federal workers have already agreed to resign. A line of Mexican National Guard and Army trucks rumbled along the border separating Ciudad Juarez and El Paso, Texas. They are among the first of 10,000 troops Mexico has sent to its northern frontier following threats of high tariffs being imposed on Mexican goods by U.S. President Donald Trump. Masked and armed National Guard members picked through bushes and brush running along the border barrier on the outskirts of Ciudad Juarez, pulling out ladders tucked away in trenches and pulling them onto trucks. Now, patrols were also seen in other parts of the border near Tijuana. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and his U.S. counterpart Pete Hegseth had a phone conversation, in fact, to discuss strengthening India-U.S. defense ties. This was their first call since Hegseth took office, and it comes just before PM Narendra Modi's visit to Washington. The two ministers agreed to work on a 10-year comprehensive framework to, in fact, bolster their defense partnership, focusing on areas like intelligence, logistics, operational, and industrial engagement. They also discussed expanding cooperation in advanced technology, defense industrial supply chains, interoperability, logistics, information sharing, and joint military exercises. Singh described the conversation as, in fact, excellent and tweeted that they explored ways to deepen India-US bilateral defense relationship. He also mentioned that they agreed to an ambitious agenda covering operational, intelligence, logistical, and defense industrial collaboration. A U.S. military contracted plane crashed in a rice field in the southern Philippines Thursday, killing all 4 people on board, the U.S. Embassy and Philippine officials have said. 1 American service member and 3 defense contractors were killed in the crash, the U.S. military said. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines confirmed the crash of a light plane in the Del Sur province. A 4th contingent of Kenyan police arrived on Thursday in Haiti to help repel violent gangs. This as officials brushed off concerns of a halt in some U.S. funding to the UN-backed mission. The 200 police officers from the East African country joined more than 600 other Kenyans already working alongside Haiti's national police as a part of multinational force boosted by soldiers and police deployed by countries including Jamaica, Guatemala, and El Salvador. The latest deployment of Kenyan police comes 2 days after the U.S. notified the United Nations that it was in fact freezing the $13.3 million stated for missions as part of a sweeping freeze on foreign assistance imposed by U.S. President Donald J. Trump. Sweden is reeling from its deadliest mass shooting, which killed at least 11 people, including the murderer, as investigators piece together what happened at an adult education center in Örebro on Tuesday. Now, Swedish police confirmed on Tuesday evening that around 10 people were killed in the shooting, which took place at noon at the Riksbergska skolan. It's an education center in Örebro, a city west of Stockholm. The shooter suspect is among the deceased, according to the police. Meanwhile, cops investigating this case described the scene on the campus of the Riksbergska Adult Education Center as chaotic and terrified, after the gunman indiscriminately opened fire against anyone who crossed his path. Various Swedish media outlets have identified the suspect as Rickard Anderson, a 35-year-old resident of Örebro who had been unemployed for nearly a decade, but there has been no official confirmation of his identity. Listen in.
Sweden has always been a very peaceful country to live in. It's not like that anymore because we get a lot of criminality these days and a lot of violence, a lot more than we used to.